Hello, welcome to this video on Dhammapada chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. That's verses 129 to 30 in the consecutive numbering. Just had a bit of a technical problem with sharing. I'll try to do that again properly now. Oops. So here we are. That's the title page screen. As before, I will read it through and share text with you or share the screen. Verses 10.1 and 10.2, that's 129 and 130, are mostly identical. So we'll deal with them both in this one video. Sabbe tasanti dandassa sabbe bhayanti machuno attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. Slipped into Sanskrit there, kritva instead of katva. I will read it again with the shared screen, the shared text. Sabbe tasanti dandassa sabbe bhayanti machuno attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. We'll move on to the second verse, 10.2. Sabbe tasanti dandassa sabbe sanjeevitam piyam attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. And once more, sabbe tasanti dandassa sabbe sanjeevitam piyam attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. To the analysis. So sabbe, that's the masculine, nominative masculine plural here. Remember that this is the pronominal declension, so it doesn't decline like normal nouns and adjectives ending in a short a. The sabbe looks like either the instrumental singular or the accusative plural. In fact, it's the nominative and accusative plural here, because the pronominal declension makes the nominative masculine plural in e, like eka, meaning one, eke, plural, literally meaning ones, but in fact meaning some people. So sabba, all, sabbe, all persons, everybody. Sabbe tasanti, all fear. It's from the root tras, which is actually cognate with our English word terror, from the Latin verb terre or terrere with a double R. It's likely that in an earlier form of Latin, before it came into the classical Latin that we know, it was in fact an RS. In modern Persian, for example, to fear has the root tarsidan in modern Persian. And trasanti in Sanskrit, tasanti in Pali. Like many verbs denoting fearing, it takes the genitive. It can also take the locative, but verbs of fearing very commonly govern the genitive rather than the accusative. Rather than in English, you fear something, that you are afraid of something. So it's this the genitive that's used here, dandasa. They're afraid of the stick, literally the stick. That's the literal meaning of the word danda. though it's used figuratively to mean punishment generally, just as in English, for example, we talk about giving somebody stick or spare the rod and spoil the child. So that's it, physically meaning a stick, then by extension meaning punishment. Sabbeta santidandassa, sabbibhayanti machuno. Everyone fears death. This bhayanti, let me just call up the iPad. It's from the root, the root bhi, meaning to fear. It's a class 1 verb, and so what happens is that the e becomes a. I'm talking Sanskrit now by guna bhe plus ati, and by internal sandhi, not external sandhi, internal sandhi, a plus a becomes aya. So that's how you could bhi, bhe-ati, bhayati. So bhayati is the form in Sanskrit. But in Pali, this is a bit of an anomaly in Pali. It becomes a long a. So that's how we get bhayati. Sabbe bhayanti nandasa. Sabbe tasanti nandasa. Sabbe bhayanti machuno. Machuno. This, it's from our root mri, to die. One of the numerous ways of forming a verbal noun is tu. It's not very common, but mrityu is a common word in which it appears. Mrityu, meaning death, and in Pali, machu. So by regular phonetic progression, mrityu, machu. And it makes the genitive, it can be machusa or machuno, both are equally correct in Pali. So, sabbe bhayanti machuno, all are afraid of death. Attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. I've explained upama in the notes. It means a simile. And we have the simile of the saw, kakuchopama sutta. Upama literally means an up measure, upa, up, and ma, to measure. And to measure, upama means to measure one thing up against another, and therefore to compare. And so the verbal noun upama means a likeness or a comparison. So if you compare yourself with another, or make yourself a comparison, attanam upamang katva, making yourself an example, making yourself a comparison, means basically putting yourself in other people's shoes. Do as you would be done by. So attanam, so katva, making, attanam, oneself, upamam, an example, treating yourself as an example for everyone else. In other words, imagining if you're proposing to do something to somebody else, imagining that's being done to you, and on that basis, do you do it or not? Note here, we've got the atanang upamang katva. We've got the anuswara here. Now remember that in Sanskrit, where you get the final M followed by a vowel, you'd never have anuswara. It would always be full consonantal M. That's how it normally appears in Pali prose, but in Pali poetry, you can violate that rule and you can have the anuswara M before a vowel. What happens if you do that is that this becomes a long vowel. You're going to hold the sound atanang upamang katva. If it were regular prose, this would be atanamupamang atanamu amu short atanamupamang katva with the anuswara being atanang upamang katva. That is done solely for the sake of the meter in poetry. As I say, you will normally not find that phenomenon. You occasionally find it in prose, but normally you wouldn't find it in prose, and in Sanskrit it wouldn't be allowed at all. Um, and here you see the way I've written it in the Devanagari. You've got the n with the anuswara there. That dot above it is what we represent in English as the M with the dot under. There's atanang, see, followed by a vowel. Upamang simply would not be allowed in Sanskrit. Be atanamupamam. Atanamu written as namu. So atanam upamang katva, making oneself an upama, an example, nahanaya naghataye. Hanaya and ghataye, these are both third singular optative forms with no identified subject. This is the general expression of everyone ought to do. Let one not kill, or one should not kill, or cause to kill. This root han, meaning to kill, the same in Sanskrit and Pali. Han. Now, hanaya is the optative form. Hanaya, nahanaya, that's regular. One should not kill. This root han is a little bit irregular. It used to be ghan in an earlier form of the language, even pre-Vedic. And this g that it originally was sometimes comes back. And it comes back in the form ghata, the verbal noun ghata, meaning a killing, the act of killing. What happens here in the verb that we see, naghataye, hanaya is a regularly formed optative form from the verb han, that's regular. Ghataye, what has happened here in ghataye is that this verbal noun ghata has been taken and a further verb is now made not off the root but off the verbal noun. And it's called a denominative verb. In other words, it's just the linguist's name for it. It's a verb that's formed off a noun and not off a verbal root. So in Sanskrit, you have ghatayati, and in Pali, ghateti. Pali also allows ghatayati, but ghateti is more common in Pali, meaning it can either mean, in Sanskrit, sorry, it has more the meaning of cause to kill, get somebody else to kill. And in Sanskrit, it actually also has the meaning of having somebody put to death as the execution of the death penalty. In Pali, it can have two meanings, either to kill, so a bit like just hanati, hanaya, or to cause others to kill, to get somebody else to do your dirty work for you. And it's somewhat ambiguous which one it means here. I tend to the view, so hanaya nagate, one should not do the kill by one's own hand, nor should one cause the killing by getting another person to do it. So we'll go now to verse 10.2. Sabbe tasanti sabbe tasanti dandassa sabbe sam jivitam piyam attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. Now the second line, sabbe upamang, attanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye, is identical with the previous verse. The first line, the first pada, the first half line, is identical. Sabbe dasanti dandasa. The only difference between these two verses is in the second pada of the first line. Sabbe sam jivitam piyam. In this pronominal declension of sabba, we have the nominative masculine plural, not sabba, but sabbe. And equally, the genitive plural is not sabbanam, which would be wrong, it's sabbesam, of everybody, literally. Sabbesam jivitam piyam, of everybody or for everybody, jivitam piyam. Life is dear. So life is dear. So everyone fears punishment. Life is dear to everyone. And I've done a note on jivita. That means life as opposed to death. So I'll read these verses through again before we wind up this video. Sabbe tasanti dandassa, sabbe bhayanti machunu, tattanam upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. Sabbe tasanti dandassa, sabbe sanjivitam piyang, attanang upamang katva nahanaya naghataye. And that's it on this video.